I'm back. Road Rants on Star Wars. We are getting new information leaking about J.J. Abrams, The Rise of Skywalker, and Lucasfilm, the meddling, the sabotaging. This came out overnight. It's a lengthy leak. There's actually a fifth piece of this that we'll get to as we go through the video. Okay. And it's sort of as we suspected. There's a different movie out there, essentially. Since shortly after the release weekend, I've been corresponding with someone who worked closely on the production of T-Rose and works for one of the major companies I cannot disclose here. I have verified the source to my satisfaction. To protect the source, I am rewording what we spoke about over the last 2 weeks, and I am submitting to that to you in bullet points. I have written it based on what I was told. The TLDR is what they were upset with the final product of T-Rose and wanted to share their perspective of how it went down and where it went wrong. Now, of course, this is all just rumor/leak, okay? But we've been seeing, I've brought you various leaks. I can tell you, the leaks on The Rise of Skywalker 6, 8, 9 months ago looked like a much better film than what we ended up getting, okay, with a different ending. An ending I might have been happy with, if you want to know the truth. The leakers for T-Rose had an agenda and are tied to Disney directly. My source confessed that they have an agenda as well, and that they struggle with ignoring what's been happening to someone who they think doesn't deserve it. It's been my theory that J.J. Abrams actually leaked all the leaks onto Reddit, okay? Or let the leaks get out. If JJ didn't do it, then somebody else did close to that situation. JJ has always treated everyone on and offset with respect. So my source's agenda is that Disney has done to JJ and how much they screwed him over should be something that people are at least aware of, whether you like him as a filmmaker or not. Disney was one of the studios who were in the Bad Robot bidding war last year. Disney never had much interest in BR as a company, but they did in JJ because they saw WB as a major threat, Warner Brothers. I wondered when he signed the $500 million deal with Warner Brothers back in July, I think, but it had been rumored for 8 or 9 months prior that he could be going to the WB. I wondered how much that would end up affecting this film from Disney's standpoint. JJ is very successful at bringing franchises back, like Mission Impossible, Star Trek, and Star Wars. WB is struggling with DC aside from Wonder Woman. DC is still seen as a bit of a joke in its current state. WB wants Abrams for some DC projects. My source said this generation's Star Wars is the MCU, and Marvel's biggest threat is a well-operational DC. They want to keep DC in limbo that they're in right now. Abrams jump-starting that franchise with something successful, like an audience-pleasing Superman movie, makes them nervous. Their goal is to make JJ look bad to potential investors and shareholders. Again, I wondered how that was going to work out because JJ was going to become the competition. And it's no secret that Disney looks at Marvel the way we wish they would look at Star Wars. Okay, and look what that's been built into, an empire, right? My source mentioned this shortly after the premiere. T-Rose we saw last night was not the T-Rose we thought we worked on. Holy shit. I wondered about that going into premiere. I said on a live stream, I said, was it just me, or does JJ seem like in the days afterwards, like he's talking about a film that, like he was surprised by what he saw in the theater? JJ was devastated and blindsided by this. He was feeling down over the last 6 months because of some of the ridiculous demands Disney had that changed his movie story. While the scenes were shot, a lot of the changes were made in post-production and the audio was re-recorded and altered. My source said they've never seen anything like that happen before. He's the director, and he wasn't in the know about what they were doing behind his back. Whoa! Shots fired. Apparently, JJ felt threatened over the month leading up to the premiere. Rian Johnson was never part of Episode 8. I really didn't think he was either. JJ was brought back by Iger, not Kathleen Kennedy. I've said that on this channel several times. Disney insisted on more fan service and less controversy. JJ's original agreement when he signed on was indicating that he would have more creative control than he did on TFA. It became evident this wasn't the case only a couple of weeks into shooting when the trouble with meddling started to begin. Okay, I'm going to say something right there. If this was the case, JJ should have quit. So I'm going to put a little of that, I'm going to put some of that on JJ. If he saw that happening already, he should have quit. Let them fucking deal with it. To hell with them. JJ wanted to do scenes he thought was important, but Disney shut it down, citing budgetary issues. Right after The Last Jedi, you're worried about your budget? May 2019, JJ argued that those scenes were crucial. He had to let go of one of the scenes. The other scene he insisted on was approved at first. He did the reshoots and additional photography in July. We heard about that. The new scene was shot at BR in October. The, quote, ending that will blow your mind was part of this. Older actors were included: Hayden, Ewan, Samuel. Anybody who wasn't animated. The Force Ghosts weren't meant to be voices because they shot footage on camera. I've said that several times. I know for a fact Hayden had shot scenes for the movie. So, that tells you right there, okay? The actors were in costumes. Rey was supposed to be surrounded by Force Ghosts to serve as a barrier between her and the Sith surrounding them. So, it doesn't matter. The movie would have still sucked if Anakin didn't put Palpatine down on his own. My source thinks, but can't 100% confirm, that this is because of China. It's an office talk of some sort. Some VX people claim that they have a list of approved shades of blue they could use on Luke's Force Ghost. Cutting this out is when the bad blood turned into a nightmare for JJ because the movie he was making was suddenly unrecognizable to him in almost every way. My force knows JJ well enough to know that he's not the yelling type, but apparently in a meeting he yelled something along the lines of, quote, "Why don't you just put directed and written by Lucasfilm?" Wow. My source wasn't present for that exchange, but knows some who were. Disney demanded they shoot some scenes that would have things in it for merchandise. I've said this whole thing is about merchandise. I said that in a video yesterday, I think. Quote, "They Fly Now" is one of them. It's also JJ's least favorite scene. At the November screening, it was a 2-hour and 37-minute cut. By the way, it had gotten out months ago that the theaters were told to reserve, I think, at least 2 hours and 35 minutes. Something right in there. He cringed and groaned and laughed when the scene was on. My source says that JJ was most likely not joking when he said, "You're right," in an interview where they asked him about the T-Rose criticism. JJ's original early November cut was 3 hours and 2 minutes long. I've been hearing that for a long, long time. Nearly a year. That it was, his cut was over 3 hours. In January, JJ suggested that they turn this into 2 films. Good God. Chris Terrio just brought that up. Terrio mentioned it in an interview a couple of days ago when Disney said no, JJ was content making it 3 hours long. Over a period of 9 months, JJ started realizing that one by one his ideas and whole scenes were being thrown out the window or entirely altered by people who have no business meddling with creatives. Kathleen Kennedy. They were not on the same page when it came to creative decisions, and it became obvious that Disney had an agenda. In addition to wanting to please shareholders, Disney could afford messing up 9 for the sake of the bigger picture when it came to protecting things unrelated to 9. The cut JJ eventually hesitantly agreed to in early December was 2 hours and 37 minutes long. It wasn't the cut we saw, which he wouldn't have approved of. 2 hours and 22 minutes. Wow. Apart from the Force Ghost, there were other crucial and emotional scenes missing. The cut they released looked chopped and taped together with weak Scotch tape. That is JJ's words. That's exactly what the film felt like, too. It felt like it was just a moshed together bunch of scenes, sort of edited together a bunch of scenes. The movie opened with Rey's training. Her first scene with Rose was shortly thereafter. Rey damaged BB-8 during the training. Rose made a silly joke about how Poe was going to kill her for damaging BB-8. There was a moment where she looked distressed and worried. The next scene was noise as the Falcon was landing. Rey runs over. These two women who kissed at the end were visible in this shot and were holding hands. One of them ran towards the Falcon as it landed. Kylo on Mustafar, that scene was 2 minutes longer. There was a moment where Kylo seemed a bit dizzy and his vision was thrown as blurry for a second, almost as if time stopped while everybody in the background was in slow motion. Kylo hears Vader's breathing and then shakes his head, and time goes back to moving at a normal pace. He jumps back into the battle. The scene from the trailer where he knocks the guy down, which did end up in the movie later. They cut some of the scenes from the Lightspeed skipping segment. Some of the planets that were cut were Kashyyyk, Naboo, and Kamino. Damn it. The scene where the TIE fighters are chasing them through the iceberg, those corridors are inspired by a video game JJ used to play in the 90s called Rebel Assault 2. The third level in the game with the tunnels on Endor specifically. Jannah was confirmed to be Lando's daughter. We'd heard that a long time ago. Rey not only healed Kylo's face scar, but she killed Kylo when she healed Ben. Kylo ceased when Rey healed him. My source mentioned that some people assumed it was Han Solo who healed him, but that wasn't true. That Leia using her own memories as well as Ben's to create a physical manifestation of his own thoughts to nudge him towards what he needed to do. That was her own way of communicating with him. And that wasn't possible without her dying in the process. She made the ultimate sacrifice for her son, and this flew over the heads of Disney. The late November cut had scenes with Rose and Rey still. JJ wanted to give her a more meaningful arc. Disney felt that was too risky. My source mentioned that Terrio said that it was because of the Leia scenes was only partially true. There were 4 other scenes, including 2 with Rey and Daisy, that Leia was not in. Finn wanting to tell Rey something was always meant to be Force sensitivity. In the 3-hour cut, it is explicitly stated. There was a moment when Jannah and he was running across the Star Destroyer. Finn needed to unblock something, and he used a force move on it. However, he acted surprised when it happened. This was replaced with a CGI BB-8 fixing whatever he needed to fix. I'm actually glad they did that, because I'm tired of seeing people use the Force that have no training whatsoever. Babu Frick was nearly cut because some exec at Disney thought he would be the new Jar Jar. They really were surprised that people loved him as much as they did. He was JJ's idea and was created with collaboration of some artists and puppeteers. The personality was all JJ. I actually like Babu Frick. If you want to know the truth, I thought I was going to hate him. I liked him. There were a bunch of scenes where Rey and Kylo separately went through quiet moments of reflection to deal with what they were going through. On her part, her going through the realization that there's something sinister about her past. Him going through regret and remorse, but trying to shut it out. My source said Kylo scenes were especially amazing because Adam Driver's performance and how he managed to portray the inner turmoil. It provided much more context and added deeper meaning to both his battle with Rey and the final redemption at the end. It didn't happen so suddenly, and it was much more structured than what we got. I still don't know that it would have mattered. Okay, just being real, you're still talking about two characters that at this point so many people just don't care about. They're not invested in, right? Kylo Ren scene where he dies is at least 4 minutes longer with more dialogue. Ben was supposed to have died. The source also added that if he wasn't, then that might have been in an earlier draft. The first draft they read included Lando. Good God. JJ was going to kill Lando? That would have been the worst decision in the history of decisions. Next to killing Chewie. And next to Luke dying. Next to Anakin not being brought back to end Palpatine. The list goes on and the hits just keep on coming. The Reylo kiss and Ben's death was not part of the reshoots. It was part of re-editing. Even the cut that JJ thought was coming out earlier this month had a longer version of that scene that was shown in the theatrical cut. JJ was against the Reylo kiss, or Reylo in general. That tells you that's a Carrie Hart, Ryan Johnson thing. I'm telling you, Kathleen Kennedy. This was Disney's attempt to please both sides of the fandom. Bad move. JJ was not happy with where the Last Jedi took the story. How many leaks do we have to have where people will start believing that? They'll come on, oh, JJ was executive producer. He approved blah, 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 blah. You know, JJ's played the political game. The one thing I will say about JJ I've noticed is JJ's a nice dude. Okay? I don't think he is literally in public trying to throw anybody under the bus ever. And right now, that's a problem for him. He does need to come out and just throw some fuckers under the bus, but he's playing the game. Warner Brothers probably wouldn't care, but other people in the industry definitely would. The final result is a mix of that story and the story told by Disney, and whoever they tried to impress, certainly not the fans. JJ is gutted over the final result. Star Wars means a lot to him. He had to sacrifice large chunks of story in The Force Awakens, but he was promised more creative control on T-Rose, and instead he was on the leash they had only tightened. So he had less creative control on this movie, even though he was supposed to have the creative control. Good God, what a mess. A source said that this one franchise and this one piece of his work this was the one franchise and one piece of his work he didn't want to mess up, and it turned into his worst nightmare. I've always heard Star Wars is J.J. Abrams' favorite everything. So that's a shame. The one thing he didn't want to get wrong, it's all fucked up. When he found out that he was blindsided with the cut they presented, he said, "What the fuck?" When Kylo was fighting the Knights of Ren at the end, and the Williams music that was used for it was not what he wanted at all. He said he thought it seemed out of place. JJ's cut still exists and always will exist. We will likely never see it unless somebody accidentally leaks it. We won't ever see that. No worries. We won't ever see that. I don't think that will ever happen. I'd like to see it. I would. 3 hours and 2 minutes? Or I guess technically it would probably be 2 hours and 37 minutes. But if there's a cut out there that's 3 hours and 2 minutes, that's the one I want to see. But look, there's still key elements here. You know, if Anakin doesn't put Palpatine down, that is the crucial part of the story. And at the end, that is the whole issue. Palpatine having been brought back, period, is really a massive issue. And it stems from Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson and Carrie Hart killing Snoke. That's where the other big... This whole thing went wrong because they didn't have Luke catch that lightsaber in the snow from The Force Awakens. That's on JJ or it's on Kathleen or whoever was part of The Force Awakens. Who knows now? I would love to get some leaks on The Force Awakens now to see what his original idea was. Because if they'd had Luke catch that lightsaber and then him and Ben have a fight, it means right there Rey couldn't take care of herself. She couldn't beat Kylo and had to be saved by Luke. Plus, it would have gave Luke a triumphant return. Right? So the franchise could have been a lot different right there. And then if somehow he was like, I'll take you to the Jedi Temple, and that's where you're trained, and they leave together on the Falcon to go to the Last Jedi, and then we just follow a normal training arc like we had from The Empire Strikes Back, right? With Yoda and Luke, only with Rey and Luke this time, okay? And then she could have failed at the end of the movie. I mean, this whole thing, Snoke not getting killed, it's terrible. And look, Lucasfilm, you have got to take... Disney, you have got to take your heads out of your asses. You've got to get rid of Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy is a poison pill. And I'm not too sure at this point I think Bob Iger's a poison pill too. Get rid of his ass. The problem is I've heard Alan Horn actually liked The Last Jedi. Bob Iger didn't, but Alan Horn did. And he's shocked. Words I heard was Alan Horn is shocked that the fans didn't like The Last Jedi. You know what? Disney, they need to sell Lucasfilm. Sell it. Because you obviously don't get Star Wars. They're trying to handle it. They think they're trying to handle it like Marvel. It's not the same kind of property. Really, they're handling it like it's the Pirates of the Caribbean or some other tentpole franchise. When these films mean way more to people. Star Wars is a borderline religion to some people, okay? God, it's ingrained in people's... They have no idea what this franchise means to people. And that's the problem. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, you can tell from The Mandalorian, they absolutely understand what this franchise means to people. Kathleen Kennedy, Bob Iger, they have no clue. Carrie Hart, no clue. Luckily, she's gone. And there's something out there right now about Carrie Hart and Rian Johnson and somebody else are all working together in a group. What a nightmare trifecta of fuckers that is. You tell me what you think about all these leaks. The Rise of Skywalker, the plot thickens. We're going to get more of this stuff. We said that the floodgates are going to open. And they're opening right now. We've had, what, 3 different leaks since the movie came out? And all of them are about JJ getting screwed. This is unreal. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.